1.6a, Day 1, a review of evaluating trig functions. This is the Church of St. Mary, designed by Sir Christopher Wren, which originally stood in London, England, and was built in 1672. It was destroyed during the London Blitz during World War II and reassembled at the National Churchill Museum at Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri, as a memorial to Winston Churchill. Fulton, Missouri is where Winston Churchill made his famous Iron Curtain speech. When you were first introduced to trigonometry, trig functions were defined in terms of the sides of a right triangle. We had opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. Sine of theta was defined as opposite over hypotenuse. Cosine of theta was defined as adjacent over hypotenuse. And tangent of theta was defined as opposite over adjacent. If we superimpose this triangle on a unit circle, we can redefine the functions in terms of x and y. We can label the horizontal side x, the vertical side y, and the hypotenuse is 1 because it is a unit circle. Now sine theta becomes just y over 1, or y. Cosine theta is x over 1, or just x. And tangent theta is y over x, which is also sine theta over cosine theta. Using these definitions, we can evaluate trig functions for angles on the x and y axis that do not make a triangle. For example, those points right there. At theta equals 0, the cosine theta is just the x value, which is 1, and the sine theta, which is the y value, is 0. And we can do the same thing at these other points. Here, sine theta is 1, cosine theta is 0. Sine theta is 0, cosine theta is negative 1. Sine theta is negative 1, cosine theta is 0. A sine curve is just the graph of the y values of a unit circle as the angle changes. A unit circle has a radius of 1, remember. So at pi over 2, the sine is 1. At pi, the sine is 0. At 3 pi over 2, the sine is negative 1. And at 2 pi, once again, the vertical distance is the sine. The sine is 0. This means that we can use a unit circle to evaluate the sine function. All we have to do is find the y values. The sine of an angle is the y value, or vertical distance. If you forget, sine is vertical, like a stop sign. Sine 0 equals 0. Sine pi over 2 equals 1. Sine of pi equals 0. Sine of 3 pi over 2 equals negative 1. Sine of 2 pi equals 0. The cosine of an angle is the x value, or horizontal distance. So the cosine of 0 is 1. The cosine of pi over 2 is 0. The cosine of pi is -1. The cosine of 3 pi over 2 is 0. And the cosine of 2 pi is 1. Once you know the sine and cosine, you can find the other functions using the definitions. Tangent of theta is sine theta over cosine theta. Cotangent of theta equals cosine theta over sine theta. Secant theta is 1 over cosine theta. Cosecant theta is 1 over sine theta. Functions are undefined when the denominator is 0. Now let's try a few. Answer as quickly as you can. Tangent of 0. 0. Tangent of pi over 2. It's undefined because we'd be dividing by 0. Tangent of pi is 0 because it's 0 over -1. Tangent of 3 pi over 2. Once again, the cosine is 0, so it's undefined. Tangent of 2 pi, 0, because it's 0 over 1. Here's a few more. Cotangent of pi over 2, 0. Secant of 0. Remember, secant is 1 over cosine, and the cosine of 0 is 1. So we get 1. Secant of pi over 2 is undefined because we're dividing by 0. Cotangent of 3 pi over 2, 0. Secant of 3 pi over 2, undefined. Cosecant of 0, undefined. Cosecant of pi over 2, 1. Secant of pi. Secant is 1 over cosine. The cosine is -1, so it's going to be -1. Cosecant of pi, 1 over sine. Oh, it's 1 over 0. Undefined. Cotangent of 0. Undefined, because we're dividing by sine, and the sine is 0. Cotangent of pi, undefined. Secant of pi over 2, undefined. You need to practice these until you've got them down. You don't have to have them memorized, though. You can think about or look at the unit circle.